So I will not say as much with respect to the constituency matters as I would ordinarily, in great part because at a very recent community meeting, I was able to give a full update on constituency matters. I know that you heard from your new president as well today on some of the activity of the branch over the last year. But there are two constituency matters in particular that I feel that I must make a comment on. One has to do with, and perhaps it is a single point that we can take from a couple angles, but I made the point recently on the matter of infrastructure in urban communities, that we have to be very careful, we have to be very cautious that we have an even balance of physical development across the country. When it comes to matters of road infrastructure, road maintenance, one understands that the northern constituencies, the northern parishes, the Scotland district has for some time needed stabilization work. Because we know that, quite frankly, this is a matter of life and death. We do not want to have an episode, we don't want to have an incident where there's some kind of there's some kind of disaster, there's something that happens that causes slippage. Already we know that some residents in those areas are experiencing that, so we know that that investment has to be made and must continue. The point I continue to make, however, is that urban communities, communities in St. Michael, those that have those that tend to have very close housing, and we know what we mean by close. When I was growing up in Haggett Hall, I could literally put my hand through my window and touch the side of my neighbor's house. We know that that is how urban Barbados is put together. We know the history of it. We know that this is small holdings of tenantry land that, that people are living on. But given that we also have that, that tension in urban communities, it means that we have to keep up on the investment in those communities. Because many of us understand that if you are in a situation where there are challenges of housing, there are challenges of employment, there are other kinds of social challenges, and there are also challenges of infrastructure, that it can tend to feel as if one is a little bit forgotten or a little bit left behind. And so I say that because I want you to know that I continue to make that case on behalf of St. Michael South Central to the responsible ministry and to the government. Because while we know that there had been in the previous administration a certain level of neglect of the road network, and now the level of investment in roads is much higher and much more significant, I also must remind my colleagues in government that St. Michael also must see a certain level of maintenance and investment in infrastructure in order to make sure that we don't go too far east as west, as they say, and to make sure that we don't go in the other direction and have these communities left behind. And so I think how we choose to invest in road infrastructure is important. I am aware, having been Minister for Economic Affairs and Investment, of the different sources of capital funding for roads. I am aware that there is funding earmarked for community roads, for tenantry roads. I am aware that one of the reasons that we sought to have through the Latin American Development Bank, or CAF, one of the reasons that we sought not just an investment loan for roads, but something called a sector-wide approach program. The sector-wide approach program essentially gave us the flexibility to make some of our own critical decisions in which roads, to be able to do smaller roads, to be able to do culverts, to be able to reinstate bus stops, road signage. That's one of the reasons that government chose to enter into that kind of program. And so I know perhaps more than most what is possible and what we should be expecting. So I wanted to give that update. many people see me and ask, and some on social media leave comments and say, Ms. Caddle, you know, I see some good things happening in the constituency, but what's happening with the Halls Road commercial village? And it's really just a quick update to say that we took the decision, given the responsibility of the Urban Development Commission and the experience of the Urban Development Commission, we took the decision to have that project now executed, the build out of the commercial kiosk, now be executed by the Urban Development Commission. Previously, that would have been a project of the Ministry of Youth. What will happen is that the Urban Development Commission will now very soon start the planning and erection of the kiosks, and once those are completed, then management of the area will go over to the Ministry of Youth to be managed as they do the other building blocks projects. So I wanted to give that quick update because I know that it is something that is an important part of the Constitution Road redevelopment. I said to my colleagues that I will not be attending any ribbon cutting or anything of the sort until we have kiosks erected and ready to be occupied by residents of these communities. Similarly, the Weymouth B pasture, we also got the commitment of the Ministry of Sports that that ground will be formally handed over to Weymouth Wales as their home ground. You can clap, clap. I want us to go on record with these things because we have that assurance. And I just spoke to the minister last week, and whatever happens in the Premier League, we want, in the BFA Premier League, we want that after that is finished, early August I think it is, that we are in a position to hand over that ground to Weymouth Wales. I think that for a side that has produced so many national players, that it is a very small ask that Weymouth B pasture, fence-less and pavilion-less as it is still, be handed over to them. And so we look forward to that. But on the question of how we make investment decisions, I wanted to quickly have a few words with you this evening about something that I think we have to pay careful attention to. A lot has been speculated on with respect to the government's agenda for growth. And I know it well because it's a conversation that I had to be a part of for over 4 years. But I will forever say that the key to any country's growth, especially a country like Barbados, is the extent to which the government invests in the environment for growth. So not to be in the business of directly investing in projects that are better done by the private sector, not to be in the business of trying to pick sectors that are growth sectors, but to say, look, we're going to give you the tools, we're going to make sure the infrastructure is sound, we're going to make sure the internet connectedness is sound, we're going to make sure that the doing business environment is sound, we're going to give Barbadians and those who may wish to visit the best chance that their business will succeed. That is the way that you get growth in a country. And, you know, I have to say that I see a lot of what we used to call navel gazing. It means just sitting down and a former colleague of ours, it sounds very indelicate, but a former colleague of ours used to call it peeping up under yourself. Just wringing of hands and gnashing of teeth, and people sitting down behind their computers or with pen in hand and thinking a lot about what is wrong with Barbados. Writing a lot about what is wrong with Barbados. And that seems to be often the only contribution they can make. And then you get down to the bottom of the article and that you see that they've framed themselves, they've styled themselves as an educator, as a retired educator. And I cannot for the life of me understand how somebody who styles themselves, who calls themselves, who characterizes themselves and has had a career as an educator, the only contribution they can make is to say what is wrong. I think we have to get beyond diagnosis and get to offering solutions. And if you are in the business of educating a nation, then you have to be able to offer solutions. And I say that with the greatest respect for those who have taught me at school, with the greatest of respect. But I am slightly embarrassed, if I'm being honest, that having had such a distinguished career in education, that the most that some of us can do is simply to be pessimistic and worried about where we find ourselves, and not to acknowledge the good that has been done, and not to also offer solutions. And so, in the spirit of having shared an institution with this gentleman, I want to encourage him to be able to come and sit with us and offer some solutions and think through, with all of that brain power that it takes to write these long treatises, to think through what are some of the solutions that we can offer. And so there's a lot of thinking. I like to be in the business of doing. And so I'll only say that we have to concern ourselves with government's economic enfranchisement agenda. What are the economic opportunities that we are really giving to people? And I started from the position of growth, because research shows us that even in low growth environments, countries have been able to improve inequality. What does that mean? Even when the numbers don't say that there is very much growth happening, it could be 0.5%, 1%, 1.5%, 2%. There have been countries that have been able to, because of their economic reengineering and who they're targeting, have been able to make sure that those who most need the support to be able to get on the economic ladder get it. And so, yes, growth must happen. But I also want us to understand that the state has the capacity, through its economic reengineering, to direct even its limited resources to the people who need it most. And so on that matter, I want to say simply this. One, I heard reference made to the notion that we have to be able to do more studies to know what is wrong with the doing business environment. For goodness sake, this country does not need any more studies to know what is wrong with the doing business environment. Everybody in this room has experienced how long it takes to get a water connection, how long it takes to get a planning permission. We've experienced the issue of what all the documentation that is needed to be considered a real human person by a financial institution and to be able to have, be able to do business. We know our experience of the National Insurance Scheme. We know, we all understand, and we all see clearly, and there has been report after report in this country about what is needed. I am quite pleased with the work that we did on having a doing business subcommittee of cabinet and then having a doing business private sector committee. We had some of our youngest, brightest, best, most varied minds on the matter. We know what is wrong. We don't need any more studies. And so we need to make sure that we get back on the horse of fixing some of those issues. A lot of work has been done. And I think that one of the greatest examples of public and private sector collaboration that we've seen is what we've been able to do in the banking system with payments, with the flexibility of payments, and there's more that is coming. And I think that's one of the things on which both the public and private sector can congratulate itself. We saw the institutions that moved quickly and that came to the table and talked it through. I think that we need a greater role and greater ownership from our credit union movement, because that's where people's money is. But I think that there are some other financial issues. Now, there have been a few programs created by this government to be able to give people work experience to get people an income. Those have been welcome. Those have been important. Those have, in many ways, been the difference between people being able to send their children to school and not. But those kinds of work programs have to have another kind of aim. And that is to be able to help people build credit. That means that the employment has to have the kind of status that allows somebody to go to the credit union and get a loan and get a credit card. It is one of the low-hanging fruit with respect to economic enfranchisement that we have to work on, because yes, an income is important. But if your job does not have the status that you can get a job letter to take to an institution and say, this is how much I get paid a week, please to lend me some money, I am afraid it does not do the job of economic enfranchisement, and it's something that we need to relook. The extent to which we allow people to invest. We've said so much about it, and I quite frankly, I'm so tired of raising it that I will only say a couple sentences. We have said, as a government, as we should have, and as we should continue to target, that we want to make sure that people do more than put their savings in the bank and get 0.01% interest rate. If we want people to be able to invest in other kinds of instruments, then we need to set up the facilities that will allow them to do so. Because I can't just get up and go into a company, into a business. I can't go into Massey and say, please, I would like to invest. There needs to be some kind of vehicle created so that we can all crowd our investments together into a single platform, perhaps through the credit union, and whoever has $5 or $10 or $20 or $100 to be able to make it count for something. We have said that that was one of the things that we were targeting. We have to be able to complete the circle on that. We've also said that there are young people in our communities who have the capacity to do certain kinds of work. And indeed, they have the capacity. The question is, do they have the provable skill? And I think that we have to get real on that matter. If I go to get surgery, if I go to my doctor and I'm referred for surgery or for some procedure, and I walk into the specialist office, one of the first things I do is look up on the wall and see where they went to school, how they learn to do what they're about to do, because they're about to make an incision, right? Similarly, any work that I am getting done, if I'm getting my house tiled, if I'm getting my roof repaired, if I'm getting my house rewired, I want to make sure that the people who are coming to do it know what they are doing, because guess what? I can't spend that money twice. I put down that money for that thing. And if, when it is done, the tiles pop off, I ain't got no more money to buy no more tiles, to pay for no more labor. So I think one of the things we came to realize was that while there are so many young people with the capacity, the productive capacity, the physical capacity, what they did not have was the proven skill to do it. And so Construction Gateway program was established. But here's the thing. One of the things we really need to reach is scale. We need to reach scale. We need to be able to get these programs at community centers. We need to be able to build, as I have asked the relevant ministry to help me do, to build some little, some structures. And Jimmy, we talked about this in Valerie. Build some structures, bring the mechanic that lives next door that says he would like to teach some of the guys, bring the mason who lives across the road that says, look, I've been doing this thing for 20 years. Bring some young people, let me teach them right here. I know that we need to have quality control. So don't get me wrong, you can't just go and put down 2,000 and say, well, I could get this done now. We need to have some quality control, but at the same time, I am a firm believer in local economic development. Bring the programs to the community in a serious way so that we can make sure that people, I know a lot of fellas are telling me, yeah, I could get that do. I'm sure you could get that do. I want you to prove to me that you have done it before. Because this is not just a question of giving you a chance, this is a question of giving the person who's paying you the best shot at getting value for their money, because that is the only money they have for this. And so we need scale in that area. And let me say one final thing on this. Let us not give young people the idea that they don't need to learn how to do something. Let us not give young people the idea that having that skill does not give them a better chance at earning a higher income. Let's give people the best chance they have. And I've had occasion to say to one or two teenagers that have come to talk to me, I've said to them, even if I had the wherewithal to find magically some work for you, I would not send you. Because you need to go and learn how to do something so that you strengthen your chances of earning at a higher income level. And so I think that we need to keep that message going. The last thing I will say in that regard, with respect to government's economic enfranchisement agenda, is that we talk a lot about a silent revolution in housing. And housing is one of the most glaring social needs. We know that. But I think that one of the things, the huge gaps in the lands and housing sector seems to be that there are people who are currently occupying homes and currently occupying land to which they do not have the title. And I'm hoping that we also soon have the census data, or perhaps a separate housing audit that can tell us what is happening with homes. The quality of homes, the living conditions. The census should be able to give you some of that information. But it seems to me that there is a big issue with the fact that if I have to prove that I have a right to be in this home, I can't prove it. I know that my grandmother went long and left me in the house. But estate planning has not become a common practice in our country. And so what happens is that people become insecure in their homes because they can't prove that they have a right to be there. And so the issue of making sure that we plan for our future generations, we have to do it now for our children. We have to make sure that we get whatever documentation drawn up to say, look, Chanel, I want you to have this home. This house is yours. You have a right to live here. This land belongs to so-and-so. You are to pay them rent of so-and-so every year in order to keep the property on this. We have to do it because the insecurity that we are seeing in the housing sector is because, and it's not just about being able to prove that you could live there. It's also about being able to get repairs to your home. It's being able to get waterborne facilities on the home, and I cannot wait for the day, wherever y'all are, you can stand and hear me hollering for murder. I cannot wait for the day that the Urban Development Commission formalizes, or whichever agency, Ministry of Housing or whichever, formalizes the policy by which a person who has occupied a piece of land for a certain number of years has an entitlement to waterborne facilities. It must be a human right to be able to have dignity with respect to water and sanitation in this country in 2023. And so, for me, that is a big part of the unfinished business of the housing sector. I've said it before. Any country that has really seen true development, true economic enfranchisement, has done so through its lands and housing and making sure that each citizen has a title hold, or at least has the wherewithal to understand and know where they live and that they have a right to be there. I've talked to too many people, not just since I've been doing this work, but for many, many years. Talked to too many people who find themselves without shelter. And with the best will in the world, the state cannot be in a position to immediately respond to every single case. I am sure they would love to. I know they would love to. But I think that just as it is a right to have access to those social services as Barbadian citizens, it has to be our responsibility as Barbadian citizens to make sure that we do what is needed to secure our title to where we live and to make sure that we are secure. So those are some of my thoughts that I wanted to share with you on what I think really must be the next step. Because even in a low growth environment, and I know that growth will come, I see that the construction sector may almost be at the point of overheating because I'm not sure that we can find the labor to supply. I know that we may have some challenges even with the supply of materials, and they're clearing at the necessary ports of entry. So I know that the construction sector is galloping ahead and is growing quickly. And so I know growth will come. But even in a low growth environment, we have to follow through on the responsibility that we have to remove inequality. Inequality is the scourge that we're fighting. And I look forward to working with the government to make that happen. Thank you very much.